involvement in the Asian American community. So I guess that's like what the.
Yeah, I mean since I'm a business faculty, it's a little less because I'm mostly, even though I'm involved with my wife in certain things and stuff like that. So.
Okay, so are we starting now?
Yeah, I just started recording.
You just started? All right, awesome.
Yeah, whenever you guys are ready.
Okay, so you'll stop after 10 minutes and go
yeah,
back.
I'll let you know. I'll just put my finger up and then.
So my first question is, where and when were you born?
Oh, I was born in 1965 in Mumbai, India. At that time it was called Bombay, India. So they've actually changed the name. As you can tell, it's not that much of a change in pronunciation, but like Bombay being the anglicization of Mumbai, it was a big deal for them that they go back to Mumbai, which is really Bombay in the native language. So my place name has actually changed. I was born in Bombay, but now it's called Mumbai, India, which is like the biggest city in India with like 20 million people.
Oh yeah. I've actually been there once. Yeah, great place. I went to Elephant Island also.
Yeah, I mean it's very different, as you can imagine. If if you're from somewhere else, like it's different. It's a completely different way of, unless you've traveled globally around the world. The first time someone goes to Mumbai, they are pretty surprised at how crowded it is and how many people there are.
Yeah, the rickshaws, everything. It's
right.
Kind of hectic. Yeah.
The traffic.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
Right.
So how long were you in Mumbai for?
I was in Mumbai from till high school. So till I went off to undergrad. I was in Mumbai, so I grew up there, and I went to elementary school, high school in Mumbai. So grade 1 to 12, but from birth to age 18, roughly.
Is there anything you like to share about your childhood, or what was it like in Mumbai, or anything?
Well, I mean, one of you has actually been there. At least one of you has been there, so you know that it's extremely crowded. It was actually less crowded then than it is today. So it was, it is. It's an interesting city in the following sense that it is one of the, it's like a cosmopolitan city. So, for the most part, the joke is like nobody's really born in Mumbai, even though I was. People move to Mumbai. It's a little bit like New York or LA, because people come from all over the country looking for jobs and opportunities and sometimes education and places to live and things like that. So it's a very big city. If you were to get the sense, in the US, it's like a combination of New York, financial center, and LA, which is the media and entertainment center. So it's like Bollywood is a part of Mumbai. So that's a big part of everybody's life growing up. So it's kind of like a combination of those two coastal cities, New York and Los Angeles. It's not the capital because New Delhi is the capital, but it's a very crowded place. But yeah, it was fun. It's you're always with friends because you can't be alone. I mean, there's no concept of alone time or private space or privacy, because those are not concepts that you just grew up with.
So at what point did you think, all right, I think I want to move to the United States?
Oh, I did my undergrad in India as well. So I went to an engineering school in India. So it was around the time that I finished my undergrad that I decided that I wanted to do higher education. I wanted to study more. Also, my major was engineering, which may not have been a good fit for me in terms of careers. I mean, it was fine as a major to study, and it always impresses people. But I didn't want to work as an engineer. So I actually did an MBA in India as well, and at that point I decided that I wanted to do even further studies. So around the age of 24, 25 is when I decided that I wanted to do a grad school, a PhD in the US. So, but it takes a couple of years. You take the exams, the GMAT, GRE, and apply. It's like a 1-year application process. I was working at that time, but I was around 24 when I decided that I wanted to study abroad, and US was a natural place because the best graduate business schools at that time, I mean, things have changed in 25 years, were in the US. There were hardly any good business schools outside of the United States then. Like I said, that's no longer true.
So at that time, did you think you'd maybe want to study in the United States then go back to India?
Yes, I mean, almost every immigrant thinks that at some point they will go back. Even though I did know that my program was a 5-year program, so I'm not going back immediately. So it's not like somebody's coming to study for a master's or even an undergrad. So you got a 5 to 6 year commitment, which is your PhD. right? So even the visa they gave you at that time was a 5-year visa, so you know that you have to be here for 5 years because you're going to do your PhD, and in some ways I thought I might go back because I'm an only child, and I have family there, but I have an equal number of family here as well. So my uncles and aunts are here, and I have some cousins back there. So at this point, my family is equally divided between India and the US. But my immediate family, mom was over there. So I did think I would go back, but I did know that if I did my PhD, my education will be so specialized that that it may not be, I may not find a job for my education, even in a country as big as India, because you're trained in very specific fields at that point, and your opportunities may lie in the US, may lie elsewhere, but I wasn't sure what I would do after my PhD, so I was uncertain, I would say.
Okay. So like backtrack, like what was your family history like? And I guess you mentioned that some of your family moved to the United States before you. So.
Yes. Yeah, my uncles actually came to the US in 1966 to do PhDs in actually what I didn't know this then, but it's called the Deep South, which is like one of them was at Kentucky and the other one was at Duke, which is in North Carolina. So yes, so I had my uncles had come here. My father's sister had also moved to Chicago in '63, and my mother's brothers had moved to the U.S. in '64. So I knew that in our family, the ones who are very good at education, they do get and study abroad. I mean, sometimes they go back, sometimes they don't. But they would go abroad to study. So I would really not be the first. I'm not a pioneer in those ways. I am probably the fourth or fifth person in my family, broadly defined, including cousins and uncles and aunts, to have studied grad school in the U.S.
Okay, so would you say that when you moved to the U.S., you already had some kind of, I guess they were in different cities, but some kind of a network of Indian Americans here for support?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I had family. I mean, I had my mom's brother, my dad's sister. They lived in Detroit and Chicago's area, so I did have that, and I did have friends who had come who had come straight after undergrad. So maybe 5 or 6 friends, but they were spread around the country. But as it happens, I went to the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, which was it happened because I went there because it's a good school, or at least I think it's a good school. But I went there for that. But my uncle was like, an hour away, and my aunt was like, Chicago, which is like 3-4 hours away. So I had some network. Though I primarily use them mainly for things like home food more than anything else, or go home and do the laundry, but not necessarily for emotional support. But I'm sure that happens subconsciously.
So can you like describe how it was when you first moved here that first year or so?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think back. It's a really long time, and I haven't thought about it for a while. I mean, obviously it's different because even though I grew up in a big cosmopolitan city, everybody there is Indian. Even though Indian is not really a race, as I try to point out to people, it's more of a nationality. So there are dark-skinned Indians, light-skinned Indians, fair-skinned Indians. There are tall Indians, short Indians, people in India who look like they are of East Asian descent. So while I was used to a diverse culture and also country, because Indians can be Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh, and those are just the main religions, right? But of course, I didn't have any exposure to others. Like there were no whites living in Mumbai at that time. There were no Africans from Africa living in, or people from China living there. Whereas if you go to the grad school in the U.S. today, a PhD program is about as diverse as you can get because you have people from 10 countries.
I thought at the time there were lots of Hari Rama, Hari Krishna people in Mumbai at the time. Were there?
No. They were, and if they were, they would be at an ashram, so they would stay in there. So you would not see them publicly.
Oh, okay, all right. Oh.
Yeah, no, but they.
Ready?
Yeah, it's ready.
Yeah, they would stay in ashrams. There were others who came to like ashrams to study yoga or for spirituality, but they would stay within. So they would not be. At that time, there were not nobody working there, or fewer tourists as well. When I was growing up, traveling around the world was not very common in the 60s and 70s as it is today. Today, of course, people are exposed to everybody. Yeah.
So what was that I guess a culture shock kind of like in that first year?
Um, yeah, I mean, for me the main thing was the weather, because Ann Arbor is so cold, and the University of Michigan is so unforgiving. It's not like in DC. You have 12 inches of snow and you're 40 below. School is still open. Yeah, I mean that's something that people who live in the DC area can't fathom. But they're like, our job is to work. I mean, it might be cold in Michigan, but that spirit I appreciated. Like, and I thought that's how it was in the rest of the country before I moved to places like DC where 1 or 2 inches of snow and everything shuts down, at least in the city. So the cold was a big adjustment because like I didn't have any warm clothes, right? And I didn't think you would need warm clothes because the last time it had snowed in my hometown was about 8,000 BC. So that's a long time ago. So obviously I didn't have any warm clothes. So that was one adjustment. The weather was, I think, food was another big one because most Indians, grow up eating Indian food and it's usually their favorite food. So then, eating, not dorms because I wasn't in the dorms, but eating cafeteria food or tacos or Subway sandwiches, which are really just, just fast food stuff, was an issue. Culturally, because of our PhD program was very diverse, so there was no single culture that was dominating in the PhD program because I had students from Brazil, I had students from Asia, I had students from the United. I think the people from the US in the PhD program would have been in a minority, so more than 50% would be foreigners in our PhD program, but the foreigners are not any single majority, right? I mean, they could be Europeans, they could be people from South America, Asia, and all of those countries. So it was more to get adjusted because everybody was different. Just because I learned how to interact with someone from New York, then I had to learn again how to interact with someone from Puerto Rico or someone from Korea or someone from China. I mean, because they all are different. So I mean, these could be your TAs, they could be your professors, they could be your research colleagues or your classmates whose help you need in getting homework and stuff. So I think it was a multicultural adjustment for me. That is, I had to adjust to not just one culture, which is the US, which you had to, of course, because when you go out shopping or something, you're like, it's the first time you're interacting with people, from like people from the US. But then in your work, which is your professors, like, my first professor was from Chile and the other professors from around, I mean, I had to get used to all kinds of accents, Hungarian accents, Chilean accents, Chinese accent, just as I'm sure it was for people to get used to my Indian accent. But it was a adjustment at various levels. But the schoolwork was also very hard. That I had to be successful at school because that's the most important thing. So it's okay if I'm cold and miserable, or it's okay if my my food preferences are not being met, as long as I can pass the classes, because that's the number one reason for coming there. But there were all levels of adjustments, and now that I think back on it, but then the family really helped because they would bring food on the weekend because it was really close. And my cousins were actually studying undergrad at the same time, so that might have really helped. So because my cousins who are Indian Americans and even people always let alone Asian Americans being one group, but at the University of Michigan, Indian Americans and Indian students had their own separate associations, and they would not associate with each other for the most part. Because so like the Indian Americans would stay within the Indian American community, and the Indian students would stay within the Indian community. And I presume because it was such a large school, there were like hundreds of Indian Americans already, and maybe dozens of Indian students. So they had their own critical masses. So they'd have separate Diwali programs or separate Christmas or I don't know how it is today because it's not really now a generation later, right? So or more. But I had my cousins, so that also helped because cousins were in the same school. So yes. So I guess my adjustment was a little easier than a lot of other people because I'd heard stories from uncles and aunts when they would come back every few years to the U.S. of various things.
And then there were also dozens of other Indian students there that you were friends
with. Right. There were at least dozens. So I mean, I didn't hang out so much at the Students Association because one of the theories that a lot of Indian parents have is that if the more time you spend with all these cultural associations, you're spending time getting ready for the Diwali show, then your studies suffer. I don't know whether that is true. It could help your studies too. Now, a class like yours will actually help. But with Calculus 8, if you're spending a lot of time in the Diwali program, then maybe your studies will suffer. Not that but yes, I did spend time going to the events, joining the Indian Students Association, and eating the food, and like attending the Diwali, attending the functions, but not participating, not singing, acting, dancing in them.
Okay. So, so for a little bit. So, today, what's your role in the Asian American community? Would you say?
Yeah, that's actually my wife is Chinese, Vietnamese, American. So I mean, which is most that you'll have to ask her because these are obviously various identities. Even though she was born in Vietnam and also lived in China before coming here. But mostly she found an organization for Asian American refugees, and then generally Asian Americans, not just necessarily refugees, because the refugees was at a point in time when there were a lot of Vietnamese refugees in the area. So I would tutor at her program, and in that program there would be Vietnamese, Chinese, and really all Asians, and others were also welcome to. Like obviously with any organization, you shouldn't and you can't say that it's only for Asians. I mean, you would welcome everybody, and there would be others as well. And I would tutor them, calculus. So essentially it's been in the education field. So whether it's my students or whether it is like in non-profit organizations like Asian American Lead or other places, my interaction with the Asian American community in terms of at least being a mentor or a guide is academically, right? So mostly I help them with college admission. So almost like I would say every year about 5 to 10 Asian American families contact me just pro bono and ask, okay, what colleges my son should apply to given his grades, and should he go for a full ride at Maryland, or should he pay full price at Brown or something like that. And there's no easy answer to that obviously because it depends on, but at least I can shed some light on these things and how they can apply and stuff like that. So and then within the Indian community it's a little bit more interesting because India is a relatively new concept, maybe 60 years old, but mostly Indians see themselves for the most part not as Indians but Punjabis, Bengalis, Maharashtrians. So in colleges there's the Indian or South Asian Student Association, obviously because there's Indians, Pakistanis, Nepalis, Bangladeshis, Sri Lankans, Bhutan and Maldives, people from the 7 countries. But when you go to the wider world, there's no Indian Cultural Association. There is the Punjabi DC Association, there is the Malayali DC Association, there's the Tamil. These are all various ethnicities and groups within India. So they all have their own associations. So, so it's not like I can join, and it literally, I can't join an Indian community organization. They have it by ethnicity. And because it's so large. That's an interesting question. Because in my particular case, because both my parents and grandparents on one side had what they call love marriages in India, as if the other marriages you don't love each other. I don't know. I don't step into every marriage. But because my grandmother was from central part of India, one of my grandfathers was from another state. So I'm actually from 4 different states. So I'm like, you would say 1/4 from 4 different states of India, in the south and in the, Malayali, Goan, Maharashtrian. So I'm actually a mix. So I can actually join. So they would welcome me at any, especially if you're doing well, they'd welcome you at any of the 4 associations. But that'll take a lot more of my time if I join 4 different, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So most of the association consists of people where the parents are both Punjabis, or they are both Kannadigas, or they are both Bengalis. But I can join like 4 different associations because I'm roughly 1/4 from each. But then also I feel less full there because I speak the language less well than them. I don't read as well as they do, and I don't know all the heritage stuff as well, or the inside jokes.
So, are you involved in the Hindu temple over here in any way? In College Park?
Yeah. So I don't know which temple you're talking about, and again, this goes back to the whole thing. And I mean, some people say that people are, they have they even have their own temples. These various ethnicities. To me, I see this because they just enjoy, spending at least some time of their lives with other Bengalis or other Maharashtrians. But the temples are also different. So the one temple that I go to is much more like non-denominational, where there are people from the north, south, east, and west. It's the Shiva Vishnu Temple in Lanham, Maryland. So it's close to College Park. It's not very far from where you
Yeah,
are.
it's one that's like 10 minutes away. It's big. It has the.
It's a huge white temple.
Yeah. Okay. That's
Right?
the one.
It's very crowded, and they have like a huge parking lot right next door to it, like really big. When my mom recently passed away, but when she was alive, and she would visit us 6 months of the year, we would go there almost every other week because she was not religious growing up, but when she got older, she was more religious. So we would go, and for example, I did have a Hindu wedding because I was told that in my family we've had a Hindu wedding for the last 100 generations, so I should continue. So even though I was not married to a Hindu, my wife grew up in a communist countries, but I mean, she professes Buddhism right now, even though her ancestral religion is probably a mix of other Chinese ancestor worship and other religions. So we did. So yeah, I used to go every other week, but now I only go in the summers or when I think it won't be very crowded. So it's more of like around the major festivals. So I'm a little bit like the perhaps as an analogy, the Jewish people who only go for the high holidays to the temple. But I used to go there like a couple of times a month. So I know all the priests, and that one is a little bit more. It's not only for the people from the north, only for the.
Yeah.
It's so big, it's for everybody. But there are other more narrower temples, which I don't go to. They're like probably 25 Hindu temples in the DC area.
Okay.
Do you feel like these temples kind of served as like a sense of community for you, or kind of developed identity for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, in some ways, yes, because at a very selfish level, because for me and my mom to connect. But I can see we don't have kids, but I can see that when you have kids, it works much more because then they have all these kinds of organizations who come to the temple and do teach the epics or teach culture, religion, or it's a temple, so you can only teach your religion. You should though expose them to all religions, of course, identity, history. So there are a lot of events happening at temples, but 90% of them are tailored to children. So because like the assumption is that my identity is already formed, but it definitely reinforces that. So I was proud to see that the priest who officiated for my wedding, for example, was the same one who officiated at the White House for, like they have a Diwali function now at the White House every year. I mean, some of that, of course, with all politicians is vote pandering, but some of that is they truly want to celebrate the event. I mean, sometimes they don't even know what they're celebrating, right? But sometimes they do truly want to be inclusive. So, but yeah, so it did help. The temple also has great food that I cannot cook. In general, yes.
Yeah. I mean, so is vegetarian though. Is the only thing.
Well, but that's vegetarian food is the best food. I am vegetarian.
Oh, you're vegetarian?
No, not fully by default because I like Indian food and the good Indian food is always vegetarian. There is some chicken and some lamb, but I save that for like special occasion or banquets. But most Indians eat vegetarian food at home because it's tasty, delicious, and as it turns out, it's apparently healthy for you. There was a research the other day that said that it can actually even reverse some bad effects of like unhealthy lifestyle of food. I mean, first they thought it would prevent that, but now it can take away like don't quote me on this, but like artery buildup or something like that. So if you go back to for the Bill Clinton example, the Bill Clinton who ate a lot of unhealthy food growing up and perhaps even as president, the last 20 years or 15 years he's been a vegetarian and all his numbers have improved dramatically.
So you're vegetarian on most days and then on
80% of the time I'm vegetarian, but I'm not like a religious vegetarian, but I'm vegetarian by taste. I prefer vegetarian food.
So okay. Are there some people in your family that are fully vegetarian or?
Yes. My uncle, my aunt, my mom used to be. My dad wasn't. I don't have any siblings, so that question doesn't arise. But there are. I would say in my family, at most times, one spouse has been purely vegetarian and the other has not. So which means the home will be vegetarian, but we eat outside.
So you tell me a little bit about how you met your wife.
Sure. I know we should tell the kids that, but we met online actually well before it was popular. Today everybody does meet online. So I had moved to DC to be to be a professor at GW, which is obviously down the street. And at that time, there's a 2-year thing I'd come down, and at that time I met her. So we met online, and like a typical, we went on a couple of dates, and then we hit it off, and then yeah. So we met online and progressed from there. So it was not through the Indian community or anything like that. It's not even an Asian dating site. The Indian dating site, interestingly, is called marriage.com. So you've no doubt, I mean, and that's a lot of commitment to sign up for a site that says marriage.com. So, I mean, you're never that sure. I should have been because I was older. I was like...
So, how long ago was this?
Yeah, so I got married in 2004, so 12 years ago. And so I was already in my late 30s, I would say, yeah, without being too specific. But yeah, I was in my late 30s.
Okay, so, and it doesn't matter, but what site was it, just out of curiosity?
Oh, that was Match.com. There was only one site then.
It was the only one?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, right, there was only one site, and then of course nowadays,
so many. And
there was that Indian site that I mentioned, which probably, was probably not.
So you weren't on marriage.com?
I probably had a profile on marriage.com because, you could meet Indian Americans and Indians there. Obviously you can set it to DC or you can set it to New York or whatever. So I was, but then that's a lot of commitment level. But that one, it works. It's actually I think it's the world's largest dating site right now. There could be something in China that's bigger, but yeah, I think it's the world's largest dating site because there are like 200 million people on it.
May I ask what attracted you to her and how it ended up developing?
Well, because she's very, very bright, she's very beautiful, she's very kind and giving. The work she was doing then, which is similar to what she's doing now, was in the Asian American community, or more specifically it was in the Vietnamese American community. It has grown since then. And she was running this organization for refugees, and so I went and saw the kind of work that she did, and so that kind of stuff. So it's something that is like an inspiring story, and we have, even though we are both immigrants, we have relatively different backgrounds, which is, I grew up in, like I said, even my uncles came to Duke in the 60s when they really couldn't, they had, even though nobody was discriminating against Indians then because they didn't know enough, but I mean, like the fountains were like blacks and whites, so they didn't even know where they were going to drink their water from because they just went home and drank water, I suppose, but because it was just blacks and whites. So clearly they can't use either at that time, but it changed obviously during their college years, right? Because we're talking about 66 is when all the move for civil rights and segregation and Jim Crow took place. But at that time, it's just like you don't know who you are then, so they must have had much more of an adjustment now that I think back to it, because there were so few Indians or Asians at that time, and the whole civil rights movement was around, turning back the Jim Crow laws and segregation, that I guess they just, flew under the radar, and like, who are you? Like they would get asked questions like, you're not white, you're not black, so who are you? And sometimes very nicely, like explain yourself, because, or in, especially in the deep south, but for me it was easier, so, because, I came much later than them, plus, unlike my wife who came here as a refugee, I came here as a grad student, so I could always turn back and go, so, if I fail, then it'll be a failure, but then I could go back, because I already had a good job. What would be the rough equivalent of, like, working for Coca-Cola or something? I had that kind of job in India before I came here, so.
Okay, so... Sorry. I wanted to be pre-med when I first started school, but then... Yeah, and then I realized I didn't, but it was too late for me to really change my major, so I just decided to stick it through. But I decided I like business a lot more, and yeah, like.
Do you take classes at Smith, or are they very apartheid-like about that?
They are apartheid-like about it for sure.
Yeah, because I don't know why, but that's just how it is.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, I should have been a business major, but instead I decided to just. If I can't be in the school, I just decided to start my own business. So for the last year, I've had a company called Escape 45. It's an escape room.
Wow.
Have you heard of escape rooms?
I don't even know what I'm in a different era, but I don't even know what an escape room is.
So an escape room it's like an entertainment thing that you show up with maybe 4 of your friends, and we stick you in a room and we lock the door and we set
like
the timer.
Literally a room.
Yeah.
This is not an online room.
No, so this is a literal room in Baltimore. There's 3 rooms. We have like a lobby and stuff. We have like a corporate room for events.
So you got a real business. This is not something online selling
Oh
stuff.
no.
Wow.
This is a real company. Yeah. Actually,
That's funny. It's like you're doing more of a business than like many of the business majors.
Yeah, I guess I don't have Wi-Fi like you, but yeah. So like we've been open for like just over a year now, and like we.
Easy. It's
it's hard. I mean back then my family did really well because Hindus pretty much ran a lot of the country.
Yes, yeah.
But then like once the Taliban took over and
Or
stuff.
even before that, even when the communists fought with the non-communists. And
it was a little better when the communists were there. Anyway, this isn't about me. This is about me.
Yeah, tell me.
All right.
I've never met too many Afghan Hindus though, so that's the first.
There's actually a pretty big community in the area. Yeah.
Wow.
But, yeah.
Any restaurants?
My dad actually owned a restaurant. Oh, any Afghan Hindu restaurants? No.
Your dad owned an Indian restaurant?
He owned a Mexican restaurant.
Okay.
There you go.
Was it good? I'm sure it was good.
It was pretty good. It closed closed at the beginning of this year, like January 1st. So it ran for like 20 years or so.
And no connection with Mexico.
No connection with Mexico. And actually, he's not the only one, only Afghan Hindu that owned a Mexican restaurant. There's 3 of us, 3 different families in a Mexican restaurant.
I'll stick to my specialty.
Yeah, but the Hindu temple in Landover, oftentimes like we go there for events, like either like a funeral or something, or like those kinds of events.
That's the same one, right? The Lanham Temple.
Yeah. Lanham.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay. What's the next question? Or what were we talking about before?
We were talking, I think, a little bit about your marriage
Mom, wife, and yeah.
Okay, I guess we had hit that enough. So going back to like your wife's program and your involvement. Mm-hmm. So you be like more specific about like the program that you guys ran.
Sure.
Like,
No, she ran it. I didn't. That was her full-time job. She was the executive director.
Mm-hmm.
It was at that point they were Vietnamese refugees who were perhaps one of the last batches of refugees who finally got permission to move to the U.S. like I think 20 years after the war. Sometimes governments move slowly. You ask for permission, it takes. So these were Vietnamese refugees who were waiting for permission to immigrate to the U.S. After the war. I mean, they qualified as refugees, obviously, for under certain criteria, and they all moved to D.C. So they all lived in D.C., but they went to and they lived in D.C. They didn't have much money, so they went to public schools. And once again, they perhaps faced the same issues that. Like my uncle and all, probably much more so, because the schools at that time were primarily focused on other children of color, right? So the school was focused on like, okay, how can we improve, and because the majority at that time were perhaps African Americans. So the schools, the schools in DC, the public schools in where they lived, there was no like Vietnamese translation or Vietnamese, so there's no understanding of these Vietnamese students. So she started an after-school program for them, and after-school education program for them as well, because so they kind of were there, but nobody knew, there was nobody culturally competent to kind of, I mean, of course there's the usual math, science, reading, writing, which any school does, but beyond that there was nothing. So she started this organization where they would come from 4 to 7, and no doubt their parents were working hard in various places, so they would have a place to go after school. From 4 to 7, and I was involved in the academic part of that. I would tutor them. Some of them were very bright, so they would do AP classes, and I would primarily tutor them in AP classes. So, like I told my wife, if somebody wants to do remedial English or math, then there are others who could do that. Since I still remember luckily a lot of my math and science. I used to tutor like maybe 2 to 3 students a year for about 7 or 8 years. And then she moved as being executive director. So that's how that one stopped, because my wife left the organization she had founded, and she handed it to a successor. And I did go for a couple more years, but I think that they moved headquarters and stuff like that. But at that time, in the time I was there were some South Asians like Bangladeshis and Pakistanis, but primarily East Asians like Vietnamese and Chinese students.
What was the name of this organization?
It was AA Lead. It was called Asian American Lead. It's fairly big now, so it's now in Virginia and Maryland, more so than in DC. It might be in DC as well, but it's in Montgomery County. It's in Virginia, Northern Virginia. where a lot of the Asian population, including South Asians, have moved.
Oh wow.
So I think it was the first Asian organization in DC, community organization.
And then since then it just spread and
Right.
kind of grown.
I mean, I think it even under my wife it spread to Maryland, and now it's moved spread to Virginia. I think part of it also because their target populations moved. So those people would come as refugees to downtown DC or parts of DC like Mount Pleasant, and others moved to places like Silver Spring, Wheaton, Northern Virginia. And newer Asian immigrants are now probably settling more in places like Annandale and Wheaton than in downtown DC. Because downtown DC is not now young millennials, right? I mean, it's different from even when I moved here, which is not that long ago.
Oh, so when did you move to DC?
So I did one stint from when I met my wife, from 2000 to 2000, maybe 2001 to 2002, and then after I got married, I came back here permanently in 2004.
How has like the landscape, or I guess like the racial landscape and the political landscape of DC changed like since your time here?
Oh, I mean racially, DC has always been, I think it's changed in several ways, I think, right? And I'm not the expert at this because I teach business, right? Even though I do business in the capital, one way it has changed is more, I would say, generationally. Lot more millennials coming into DC. It's always been, people transiting to government jobs or nonprofits, associations. But there's this this whole concept of gentrification. So, for example, where the Vietnamese refugees lived is now places where my wife used to have her community organization, in the part of town where it was needed, but perhaps it was not at that point a very, it was less expensive and everything then. So today, perhaps that, I don't think that house survives, but that neighborhood obviously survives, but like a townhome there, instead of costing $150,000, probably costs $800,000. So it's obviously one big change is the gentrification and and I can't name all the places, but I would definitely say places like, Mount Pleasant, Petworth, U Street, those kinds of areas. So I guess or Chinatown, for example, right? Yeah. I mean, it's not really a Chinatown, right? It's just an arch.
Yeah,
right?
There are no like Chinese businesses.
There are no Chinese,
no
yeah.
Chinese people living there.
Right.
They can't afford it.
Right.
Yeah.
So all the Chinese in many cases the older generation Chinese can't afford it and they have moved out. It's very expensive. Right. Now, they're $2,500. So that's the economic thing, right? So economically, racially, I think it has become more, if you just count racially, it's become more diverse, I think, the old city. Because the other thing I did through COGOD, which is we did this COGOD Millennial Index, where we look at what millennials in DC want. So it's very narrow. We don't look at what people my age want, but it's what millennials want. But one of the things is one of the facts they like about DC is that it is racially diverse. Now, it might also be socioeconomically less diverse because now the poorer people have been pushed out. For example, the Chinese from Chinatown, now there might be other Asians moving in, like millennial Asians, right? And millennials of all races and even multiracial and others from all over the world. But in terms of socioeconomic, I think it's got more expensive. So I think a lot of poorer people have been pushed out. That's one. And racially, I think it used to be, I don't know this, before my time it used to be a white and black city, I think. So it was like, it was majority black but significant white population. But now it's also other communities, right? So there's a large Hispanic population. There is a significant Asian population, even though there's not a concentration anymore like they used to be. They're more in the suburbs, right? So Annandale is, for example, Korean. But if you just talk about DC itself, I think it's more than just, in my opinion, or from my data, it's more than just a white and black city, a black majority city with an affluent white population. But now there's lots of, several groups, but it's more younger now. So only millennials, I don't know how, but only millennials can afford, Mount Pleasant, Chinatown, and places like that because, traditional older families have either been pushed out or seniors on fixed income, for example, can't live here for that.
To allow people to teach in English?
right, for essentially for me, not for me to teach in English.
No, for people
for
in
that
general.
program to be offered. This is not like English language program. This is an MBA in English at Seoul National University. The Koreans are way more open about it, right? So they, like, almost all graduate programs in Korea are in English today. Like, you will not be able to find an MBA in Korean. So it's almost the other way around. Somebody should find a niche where it's like, hey, do you want to just, but yeah, I mean, you know, Samsung wants to succeed globally. They just want to sell phones to Koreans. So
Yeah.
they want to sell, like, they want to be like Apple and they want to be like IBM. So yeah, all MBA programs around the world, not all I shouldn't say, but 90% of the MBA programs around the world are in English.
Wow. So you don't need to speak any Korean. You just go there and how long did you teach there for?
Whatever like a month and a half, whatever, like, the shortened semester. So you have a semester,
okay.
you have a module. It's the same one course, but then the 7 weeks can be condensed into 3.5. I mean, obviously you can, it's like a quarter system or whatever. So when the professor goes from here, they're going for a shorter period of time.
Interesting. Wow.
But yeah, I mean, but that's in business. That's totally true. I think Maryland has joint programs with other people as well, and yeah. So and that was interesting because talking about identity, the Koreans were open about it. They said, "You're the first Indian we have met, so we are going to judge every Indian based on you." So I'm like, that's a lot of pressure, but also that is wrong because there's 1.2 billion of us, and I'm just me. There's like, everyone's going to be different. The next person you're going to meet is going to be a factory worker. Then there's going to be, a movie star. So, it's just going to be it's all different. But they were like, okay, so now, they were like, okay, now you ask my students about Indians, and they base their experiences on the first guy they met.
Okay, so I think it's working now, so we can bring it back. So, okay.
I guess it's a pretty typical question, but what's your greatest accomplishment?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know that I have that. I would say, to get technical about it, my dissertation paper from my PhD was published and it got a lot of recognition. It's got like over 1,500 citations. So I didn't start a new field, but it kind of started a subfield within business scholarship. So I would say that would be my greatest professional accomplishment. Would be doing that paper, which is really PhD. So in a sense, I would say academically the PhD would be the accomplishment.
So what was the title of your dissertation?
What is the title? The exact title I don't know yet, but I was like linking before this. Not too many people had shown that like marketing activities affect profitability of a company, profits. So I showed that customer satisfaction affected value and profits and stuff like that. So and you have to show this very rigorously when you have to do a PhD. So using a lot of data and models and theories and stuff like that. So I would say that would be, but it's no different from, in a sense it's a run-of-the-mill PhD dissertation from a top school. So in a sense that I would, at some level I say that I've had a run-of-the-mill career, but that's, like every other prof at, like an AU or any other school, has achieved similar things. So not achieved any more or less than people who do what I do.
Okay, so do you see yourself staying at American University in the future, or where do you see yourself going?
Well, that I don't know yet, right? So I'm here, I'm happy here. I live a mile away.
Oh, wow.
So, and maybe this is a secret, but actually as faculty, the higher rank the school sometimes, the more pressure there is on you to perform and teach and stuff like that. So for example, I taught at Penn, right? At Wharton, right? So, and like I would get like, the students were all very type A and very driven, so irrespective of your political affiliations, I would say that was like teaching 30 Donald Trumps and 20 Hillary Clintons in the class. It's not fun, right? So, I mean, they're all very, it's much more pressure. AU is a much more balanced school of teaching, research, and service. I mean, it's still a very good school, and I'm locationally constrained right now because my wife works for the federal government. So she runs her own agency for Vietnamese, but this is Vietnamese in Vietnam now, as against Vietnamese in the US. So I'm locationally constrained right now, so I will probably be here for the next 5 years at least.
Oh, wow. Have you ever started a business of any sort?
No, I mean, I have worked in businesses. One of the things about business degrees or business teaching is that they teach you, there is sometimes entrepreneurship, but like I tell people, I'm a business professor, not an entrepreneurship professor. I teach you how to run a business that already exists.
Okay.
The skills of running a business, starting a business, are ironically oftentimes very different from what they teach you in business school. So I teach marketing and I teach strategy, others teach finance and accounting, but that's like how to do finance, how to do accounting for a business that already exists. Rarely is anything to do with entrepreneurship. I mean, the closest I came to that is that in an existing business, you launch new products. So I've launched food products, soft drinks products at my job in India so it'll be like launching, a new cookie for Coca-Cola or Pepsi or new potato chips.
So what was your most successful product launch? Thumbs Up?
No, that was an Indian product. No, Thumbs Up already existed for a long time, but mine was just a smaller candy and cookie like mango candies and stuff like that. But I worked for that same company incidentally that did Thumbs Up. But I was in charge of, I'm not in charge, I shouldn't say, I was early on, but I was in the cookie, confectionery and candy business.
Wow.
So which is a different business, and that's, at that time we had the biggest brand in the world by volume. It's Parle G, which was again a very big brand now.
Oh, I eat Parle G pretty often.
You eat that a lot, but yeah, so that is one of the brands we managed, but in value terms it's not much because each pack is like 5 cents, so but in volume it's the world's largest food brand. So I've managed brands within organizations, I've run new products within organizations, but I have never launched a business of my own, which is much harder. And ironically, business professors, for the most part, like you said, you started your own business, you said, but none of that was because you took classes in starting a business.
Yeah, I agree. I just think it's kind of interesting. So, in India, what was the name of the company you worked for?
It was called Parle, but that's Parle G is the name of the
main brand.
No, there's a company name and there's a brand name.
Yeah.
So Thumbs Up is a brand.
All right, and I guess Parle G is probably one of their biggest products, right?
Parle G is bigger than Thumbs Up, but
yeah,
they're both big products. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
This might be a little bit random, but before coming here, we did a little bit of research on you, and we found an interview with National Geographic.
Yeah.
What is your relationship to them?
No, that was just somebody came just like you and
yeah?
asked some questions. I mean, eventually it turned out that he wanted to prove that the person who was running National Geographic after he left, maybe he was high up, was not doing such a great job with it, but which is probably true. But an academic can find fault with. So he was doing the wrong things by diluting the brand too much. But that's not much. I mean, it shows up because I haven't done too many videos. So and videos always show up like images, right? There are not that many images of me, but that's just a flaw in the algorithm. I don't have any relationship with them. I do some consulting. But it's much more work to get the consulting business than doing it is very easy. But getting the business is a lot of work, so I don't do that much of it. But also because my wife is so busy, she runs her own consulting as well. So how many streams of income do we need? For a basic life. Plus, how many of us can do our own businesses? So she has for work, she has a consulting business which is on hold right now, and then I have my work, and so for me to also have a consulting business would just be too much.
Oh, what's the name of your wife's consulting company?
Oh, I don't know that.
Really?
No, because I know the name. It's called 11 Plus, but it's not a famous name.
Okay.
Yeah. But she does the work. She went to Harvard actually. So
oh, wow.
When her professor is not available, they're like, "Can you do the same consulting for us?" Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that this probably goes back to it, and it's related to Asian Americans and history. is that a lot of universities today are trying to be as inclusive as they can. Obviously there's a lot of, and some of that is in the political climate, and that's correct. But one of the groups that they completely ignore is international students. So a lot of schools look at international students as like revenue streams. They don't see that these are different people with different needs. So for example, like I have students from, let's say, I don't know, Pakistan or Bhutan or Nepal, and they're completely lost in a large school like like AU or Maryland and things like that, and they find they don't have a lot of support systems for them, right? And especially considering that U.S. universities are trying to attract more international students, and especially in undergraduate, because you're a graduate a little bit more, you're older, you're maybe 24, you're 23, but you're 17 or you're 18, and then you're attracting all these students, usually from very far away. They're less likely to be, as it turns out, they're less likely to be from Canada than Mexico than from Hong Kong or Russia. They don't have a lot of support services. So for example, if you looked at a university and how much they devote, they do their visas and stuff, right? They've got administrative support, like doing visas for entering and leaving, but they don't have a lot of like support for them when they are here. And also recognizing that different Asian students have different needs. Chinese students might have language needs, whereas students like who come from Europe or India might not have language needs, but they might have other cultural needs. So that's just the one thing. So sometimes what happens is then the professors of that country play like as mentors for them. Can you help me get jobs, or can you help me navigate the system, or how do I get recommendations, or how do I find careers in the US? Because so that's the other thing. So like I help South Asian students. Maybe a Korean professor is helping Korean students, a Chinese, but that's more like incidental. And while we are happy to do that, there is, especially now that schools have a stated goal that up to 20% of their undergrads, they want them to be international, primarily because international students are full fee paying. But not only because, they also, their stated reason is because they want a diverse group, which is also true. But the underlying thing is because international students, I don't know that they qualify, but usually don't ask for foreign aid. So they just, they're full fee paying.
I think that they pay even more money.
No, you can't charge them more than you would charge an out-of-state student. I guess you could, but I don't think you do. Like schools charge in-state, out-of-state, and that's it. International students pay a little bit more, but that's for added services like visa fees or health insurance, because they can't be on their parents' health insurance. So yes, they do pay more. They pay to go back. If they go back 3 times a year, going back to Philadelphia is much cheaper than going back to India or Brazil. So yes, they do pay more, but because of.
Okay, so what do you plan on? Or I guess do you try to encourage other professors to help out students, or?
Yeah, I usually notice that they tend to for some reason they tend to really at this point get